gotta take a minute here and pick this up. I've been known for criticizing American atheists, and David Silverman in particular. Is David here, or is he checking out? Anyway, I've been known to criticize, surprisingly. And we're getting there. Okay. Anyway, so I've been known to criticize it, and I have been vindicated. I have learned this weekend that American atheist is evil. So I decided to warn you all. After all, what did he do? He made us stand out in the rain for 12 hours. I'm feeling kind of achy and cruddy myself right now, so you know, I think that was intentional. And of course, what does he do? He provides all this wonderful entertainment information, so we're mesmerized and we're standing there stupidly with the rain pouring down. Really evil. And then last night, I gotta tell you, I found myself in a strange hotel room at midnight with a bottle of Jim Beam and Blair Scott. This is scary stuff going on. But we'll try to soldier on. We'll try to survive the onslaught of American atheists and get through this. What I want to do today is complete change of pace. You just heard international. After me, you get to hear Taslim and Nazreen. I think I'm the comic interlude. What I want to do is talk about science, but sort of meta talk about science, because I want to talk about the incompatibility of science and religion. And in particular, I want to tell any scientists here, any scientists in the world, that if you're not an atheist, you are not doing science right. You're doing it all wrong. You're making a mistake. And I know exactly what they're going to say. They're going to say, oh, you are so arrogant, and this is true. I am. This is kind of an arrogant, obnoxious talk. I hope you don't mind, but I am feeling cranky after that late night with Blair Scott. So, also I have to be a little bit cranky because, you know, a couple weeks ago they tell me, oh, you don't get an hour to talk. You get 25 minutes. So I had to go in and throw away half my talk. So, there it is. No, that's not it. First I want to talk a little bit about why science is godless, and I have a long section here I could talk about, but I've pruned it down, so I'm just going to give you the words of authority. I'm going to tell you why we think science is really godless. And there's a bunch of very smart people who are scientists and also atheists, hooray, and they're willing to tell you the truth. So, here's Sean Carroll. This is a simple reason why science and religion are incompatible. It's because when you do the math, when you do the experiments, when you do the observations, you discover that science is right and religion got it all wrong. It's that simple. We've given them an exam and they get a big fat F on it. So no, reject that. Another reason is, here's Vic Stender, who mentions the magic word epistemology. How do you know what you know? Scientists can tell you. We can give you a long chain of experiment observation. We can go through and give you all these publications that document the observations we're claiming to make. We can test it in real-world applications. We can see it all happening. You know, you can pull out your cell phone and it works. That's a confirmation of science. I dare you to pull out your little hands and pray and give your mother a ring. It just won't work. So again, it doesn't work. They don't know how they get their answers. They just make them up as they go along. Vic Stender also has a whole book on the incompatibility of science and religion. I highly recommend it. This is Jerry Cohen. One cannot be coherently religious and scientific at the same time. And I'll say a little bit more about this in a moment. You can't hold wacky beliefs at the same time and try to do real work in the lab. When we go in the lab, we get disciplined discipline. You say, okay, this is the way it's got to work. I'm going to set aside my subjective opinions, and I'm going to be disciplined. I'm going to be rigorous. I'm going to get the answers. And then, of course, afterwards, I can go home and sit around and hang out with Scott, or Blair Scott, and drink Jim Beam, or whatever. Totally irrational, stupid thing to do. And then, of course, there's this other thing, is people say, okay, well, find a compromise. There's got to be something in between. You've got to reconcile science and religion. Because this is a happy world that we've all got to get along. So bring it all together. And I have my answer there, and it's just this that squatting in between those on the side of reason and evidence and those worshiping superstition and myth is not a better place. It just means you are halfway to crazy. I've noticed the difference between me and those guys that are above me on this list. I tend to use more colorful language. I don't know what it is. Okay, so that's just a brief summary of why I think science and religion are incompatible. And what as I said, I have a kind of chunk of this, so I'm not going to go into greater detail on this. Instead, what I want to do is address the criticisms. Yes, people disagree with me. That's very surprising, but yes. When I say these arrogant things about how science and religion are totally incompatible, people come back and rebut me. And so what I want to do today is I want to go through 12 arguments that I have really been given from serious, intelligent people, and from some not so serious and not so intelligent people too, but serious arguments they give me why science and religion are compatible, and we will see if it actually bears out. So, first argument. This one is so common. They tell me some of the greatest scientists in history have been believers. And it's always Isaac Newton and Albert Einstein. Because there's no questioning. These are two brilliant guys. They're really smart. They made great contributions to science. We cannot take that away from them. They've done wonderful things. But the problem, of course, is so what? Yeah, Newton discovered these great things, but you know what else Newton believed in? So there's alchemy. He wrote more about Bible prophecy than he did about physics. When we looked at his letters, it's just tons and tons of weird speculation about Jesus and the end times and prophecies. Nobody mentions this in the physics texts, right? Because he's got this other good stuff that we do respect. So he's figured out some really smart things, he's figured out some really, he wasted a lot of time on some really stupid things. This is the guy who on his deathbed said the thing he was proudest of was dying as a virgin. A sentiment we do not share. Right? So let's recognize this fact that showing me some guy who was smart, or is smart, and made great contributions doesn't make it impossible for him to be a bit of a Looney Tunes. Right? It happens. People could say the same thing about me. I may have some weird behaviors. So what? The smart things I say shouldn't be subtracted because of that. Albert Einstein is an interesting case because, that there's this idea that reality really has a godless bias. And it's really true here because Albert Einstein was not a believer in God. Yet somehow he's the second most popular guy for people to throw at him and say, oh, well, Albert Einstein believed in God, therefore science and religion are compatible. Why can't I just say Einstein did not believe in God, therefore science is godless? It doesn't work that way. Okay, another argument I can make against this, of course, is Newton is really, really old, okay? We're talking 350 years ago he was doing his smart stuff. This was before Darwin. If only he and Darwin could have gotten together, Newton would have burned him at the stake. Assume that conversation. There's a whole bunch of things that were discovered after Newton that make his ideas about the origin of life on Earth, for instance, not likely. So these are old guys. What about new guys? And this is the other argument I often get. Yes, some modern scientists are Christians. Again, these are two smart people. So that's Ken Miller on the left, Francis Collins on the right. And just like Newton and Einstein, I will not detract them, I will not argue with the fact that these are competent, intelligent, well-qualified, respectable scientists who have made great contributions to our understanding of the natural world. Hooray for them. But then I will also remind you that when you say these are reasons I should accept religion and science as compatible, when you read their stuff on religion, Ken Miller is fond of claiming that God is invisible and he used quantum indeterminacy to fiddle with the dice and create things so that people came out. Something he has absolutely no evidence for. Except he's a Catholic, so he kind of likes that idea. That God had some role to play. And of course, Francis Collins wrote his book, Language of God, in which he mentioned that one of the reasons he became a Christian was because he saw a waterfall frozen in 3 streams. 3 streams, Trinity, right? All obvious. Yeah. If only he'd seen a waterfall with hundreds of streams to be a Hindu today. The thing is that, yeah, they've got wacky beliefs, but when these guys go into the lab, what do? They set those aside. They use science to work out problems in the lab. That's what they publish, is science, not religion. So yeah, you can pick out anybody, any of us here, even us nice rational atheists, we all have our wacky little beliefs that we have on the side. But what we are is we're smart enough not to think that, oh well, this justifies throwing my love of football into science. No, it doesn't. These guys have got a little problem where they can't quite see that. Now, when I have a conversation with somebody about compatibility, science, and religion, and trot out these examples, then the next thing they give me is this argument, and I'm sure many of you have heard this. It's not really an argument, it's an accusation. You are promoting scientism. Scientism is a dirty word. It's a horrible thing. Scientists, no, we don't have a word for the scientism, and anyway. People who believe in scientism think that everything is explained in terms of science. Okay, like it says there, science is the only reliable guide to truth. That's the only way you can figure anything out. Now, I tend to think that science is a pretty good and reliable guide to truth. I don't necessarily think it's the only guide to truth. If you're reading a poem, you don't use a calculator to figure out what you should feel about it, right? There is subjective experience, there is past experience, there's knowledge that we build by social networking and communicating with one another. There's psychological influences, all sorts of things. I believe those are real. I don't deny them. But when we're looking at these phenomena, we're looking at the real world. And if you want to tell me that there is another way of knowing, another path to knowledge, well, I'll just say, okay, show me. What's your alternative? This is a peculiar argument because they can't really say religion. Do you really believe that revelation is a path to knowledge? Okay. Why didn't Moses build a subway to get under the Red Sea? Then what we require here is a suspension of our understanding of the way the world works in order to accept that somebody having thoughts beamed into his head from outer space by a space ghost up there is how you acquire knowledge. It's not. We all know it's really hard work, discipline, rigor. It's learning things, trying things out. Trial and error, practice, those things are paths to knowledge. Religion isn't. So don't just tell me, well, you're a scientist, you're a scientist because you think everything is science. Tell me what I'm missing. What's this other path to knowledge I must acquire? heart. Now, of course, they've always got the same example of scientism, and they always trot this out against me. And that is, there's something you cannot explain. Can you guess what it is?
Universe.
No, you guys are thinking like theists. No, they're saying science can explain love. Right? What's that? Oxytocin, he says. Okay. Yeah, but this is somehow the magic thing that we're supposed to recognize as showing the limitations of science. And, you know, I'm a scientist. I practice something that's pretty close to scientism, but I wouldn't go quite so far as calling myself committing that particular fallacy. But, you know, this is my wedding picture. Oh, yeah. Look at that 1980s hairstyle. I'm cute, aren't I? But then is my wife. She's adorable. She's over there somewhere. There she is. Raise your hand. So we've been doing it for 13 years. And obviously the way I've done this is the nurse version. The golden cast version. This is what's running through my head. Actually, the only reason I think I like that equation is always alternating terms of in, out, in, out. Okay, but yeah, there's a truth there, and then what's going on in our heads is the movement of ions across membranes, transmitters flowing between cells. These are things that are generating my mind. I recognize that. But of course, our level of understanding is so crude that no, I would not say that I can explain love with an equation. But what I would say, what I think Mary would agree with me, is love is real. We all feel it. What these people are trying to do is take that away from us. They're trying to tell you, no, love is supernatural. Love is ghosts and souls and things that don't exist. Love is God's firing arrows into your buttocks. Whatever. They're trying to tell us that love is a bunch of made-up bullshit. And if you don't accept the bullshit, you can't possibly be really in love. Well, you know, 32 years of marriage and hang together. I think that's testimony that even as a material and natural, so yeah, they're not going to take that away from us. Even if it is just oxytocin. Man, that oxytocin feels good. Okay. Well, so they're resorting to these crude caricatures to try and say, okay, well, you can't explain it with science. So what? You can't explain it with religion either. There was no Bible verses and gods and prayers involved in our relationship ever. It was years of working it out together and living together. So, next step. You can't explain this. There's another last resort they can take. And this one is kind of pathetic. What they then tell you is they back off and say, okay, well, God is somehow with all the laws of the universe, so all scientists worship God. This is kind of Karen Armstrong approach. It's nebulous religiosity. Nothing specific. I'll forget that Jesus stuff for now. We'll come back to Jesus later. Just accept that you worship the universe. So there's God. Galaxies in space. Or if you're a biologist, there's God. Cells in the body. Or if you're me, there's God. Cephalopod. But this is kind of diluting the whole notion of religion, isn't it? You say everything is religion. Why do you believe in Jesus? I don't have to worship Jesus. I'll worship this piece of paper right here. I'll worship this lectern. I'll worship the podium. I'll worship you. Okay, I'll worship Mary. But the rest of you, you're okay. They never get around to the point where, well, then why do restrictive laws and things, like thou shalt worship no other gods before me. How can you say that while believing that everything is God? This doesn't work either. Also, another little thing here, if you're going to complain to me about scientism, isn't this religionism? Just this all-engulfing God's talk that's going to swallow us all? I don't want that either. Okay, another way to get around this. All right, we're going to go back to what are the specific beliefs we can have as a religious person. And what they do is, like I mentioned with Ken Miller earlier, they say God's works are cunningly undetectable to science. That God is there, but He's invisible. You can't measure Him, you can't feel Him, you cannot statistically detect His effect. He just did it. Accept it. And I'm going to pick on the Pope, because it's always fun to pick on the Pope. Catholics have this belief. Catholics actually say they accept evolution. Say evolution is fine. Okay, you'll accept that. There was a long chain of evolution that led to human beings. But they will also say, though, God did it. God shaped that entire pathway. And then they'll say, and there's also a few other little things you have to accept. You have to accept that Adam and Eve were real. And they'll cheerfully tell you, well, science can't prove they weren't real. They don't have evidence to show Adam and Eve. How can we do that? Actually, science does have evidence that there was no Adam and Eve, because we know the smallest population of humans that ever existed on the planet at any time was a breeding population of approximately 1,500 people. Not two. Two doesn't work. So we know that this is false. And they also say, okay, the other thing you have to accept is that God came along in one instant and He is soul. One magic moment where He endowed into the soul. Souls don't fossilize and they're not in your DNA, so leave us alone, scientists. You can't prove this is wrong. Which is true. We can't disprove any of that. The question we would ask instead is, why do you believe that? The little dissenting rabbit down there would just ask, okay, how do you know, old man, that this happened? Where's your evidence for a physical, discrete Adam and Eve, and your evidence for God going poof and infusing us with a soul? And you know what the Pope will say, right? It's in the Bible. Okay, who cares? Screw the Bible. It's not a good stuff. Furthermore, this isn't actually, what the Catholic Church is teaching isn't actually evolution. Evolution isn't a rote description of a series of steps. Evolution is about a process. What's the mechanism? How do you do these things? We should have Richard Dawkins up here. He can tell it so much more eloquently about how we've got random change, natural selection, all these things working, these blind processes, which we have evidence for, unlike God's nipple there. We have evidence for these processes, and understanding the process is the important part of understanding evolution, not memorizing a sequence of species. So that's an argument I would make there. And just simply the idea that, oh, things were cunning, yeah, sure, it's unthinkable. Then Zeno was right. And fairies are in the garden, and all these sorts of nonsense. Another argument we often get is accepting religion as a natural part of the human mind. There are many scientists who study religion who make this bizarre argument. This really doesn't argue against the incompatibility of science and religion, though. Because I could also say, well, smallpox is a natural part of the world. That doesn't mean we resign ourselves to it. We fight it. Similarly, religion. Yes, it may be a natural consequence of our brains, but we fight it. The other peculiar thing about this argument, though, is they keep saying this. And then we look at religions. This is a scene from Jesus Camp. Anybody seen this? Yeah. If it were a natural part of our brains, you kind of expect, well, if you take a little kid, you set him off in a closed room, and leave him alone, he'll come out Catholic. Right? Or all the outside influences, and ask, what happens if you give him an opportunity to just use his curiosity, his natural intelligence, to explore the world and discern what the world is telling him about the universe? They don't let you do that. Well, Camp Quest lets you do that. That program, in Camp Quest, where they're not infused with a whole bunch of propaganda and don't get to do this, they come out as free thinkers. So they're going to have to say right there, okay, maybe the natural state of our mind is to be curious and inquisitive and open-minded and not funneled into this particular path. But of course, also, this is well known that the Jesuits, for instance, have said this for many, even for 7 years now, with the man. They know that as a child, you are not naturally inclined to a particular religion. You have to be shaped. Children are plastic. Let's mold them. And I would kind of agree with this, but it kind of goes against the idea that religion is a natural part of the human mind. And say that religion is something that can be inculcated in the human mind. And I would just simply say, ditto. Right? Give those kids to me. I can show you. Pay me for it, please. Give those kids to me. Give them to you for a few years, and I will guarantee you two things: they will not come up Catholic, and they will not come up rapes. The only part where I really disagree with the Jesuit maxim is this, though. She might come out. So, what I'm telling you here is it's not really an argument against the incompatibility of religion anyway, but they make it anyway. What it is simply saying that brains are plastic, we can shape them the way we want, and maybe we should think and plan about how we want our children to grow up as rational human beings and execute a plan that implements that, rather than how to train them to grow up to be Catholic priests or Baptist ministers or silly things like this. Okay, the other argument we get, again, it doesn't address the issue. It says, okay, religion is never going to go away, so you might as well accept it. Lie back and think of England, whatever. Well, yes, I will think of England, because when we look at the trends, what do we see? Religion is going away. This is a chart of U.S. data. The line at the top are the nuns, the line at the top is the Christians, excuse me, and you see they're going down, and down there in green, the bottom, the ones going up, those are the nuns. We are going this way. Yes, we have a long ways to go. I know. Give us time, okay? Get to work, guys. We're going to get there. We're slow shaking it that way. The gap is so big, it will be never clear. Yeah, I'll say, this is the data from the United Kingdom. This is a different study than Richard Dawkins talked about yesterday. His Ipsos Mori study did kind of survey. This is the British Social Attitudes Survey. And I show this because it gives you exactly the same results. Roughly half the population of England doesn't believe anymore. It is going away. It's not inevitable. It's not a natural consequence of our brains. If you just start working on it, you can wear it away, it goes away. And Britain's doing okay. I'm not worried about Britain. Furthermore, as Richard talked about yesterday, when you actually look more closely at this data, what you discover is, even the ones who say that they're religious, many of them are nominally religious. They don't really believe in the supernatural nonsense. They believe in going to church. They believe in social networks. They believe in rituals. But they don't believe in Jesus. So we can get rid of this. This is so promising that we're seeing this happen in our lifetimes. Okay, another thing you'll hear from scientists who study religion is that religion was useful. Maybe it's not useful now, let's say, the more open-minded ones. But they'll say it used to be really useful. It was the social tool that held us together in social groups and allowed us to flourish. They say without religion, we'd still be living in the Stone Age. They give credit to religion for everything. For pulling people out of the Stone Age. But of course, at the same time, I have to show them this. This is a children's book authored by Ken Ham. Notice the dinosaurs with their razor-sharp teeth eating fruit and leaves. This is Fred and William science. This is where religion is taking us right now. This is the view being espoused by 50% of people in this country right now who are Christians. Oh, I also got to mention the guy down there. That's got to be Ken. So they say, okay, let's give credit to humans. But I say no. Give credit for the fact that we moved out of the Stone Age, that we built new tools, that we built new ways of living on human ingenuity. That's what's done the work. There has been no God going, ooh, here's a way to build a cell phone. No, it's all been us. Take credit for it. Don't give it to religion. They don't deserve it. Okay, now you see we're getting down to a desperate stage here. We're just kind of throwing these ideas around, trying to convince us that, yeah, they're compatible. Then, of course, they resort to this, another common thing. Science does evil things too. Ooh, what does science do? Science builds death rays and nuclear bombs, eugenics and sexual revolution. All these horrible things are the result of science. All I can say is I wish I had a death ray. Wouldn't it be awesome? Everyone ought to have a death ray. It's so cool. Especially my little lair. You know what I mean? So yeah, science sometimes does evil things. I will agree 100%. Eugenics, yeah, that was a crime against humanity. It still is, and some people still practice it. Yeah, nuclear bombs. We shouldn't be dropping nuclear bombs on people. The sexual revolution. Wait a minute, what's wrong with the sexual revolution? That's the other thing. What they're telling us that science does is so bad. It really isn't bad. It's progress. It's betterment of humankind. But it's change. They don't like change. Also, when they say these things, they leave a few things off. You know, there's a lot of things that science has contributed to humankind. I won't read that list off, but you can imagine whatever you want. Whatever your favorite thing in the world right now is, I bet you science had something to do with it. Or had something to do with your ability to access it. That's what science does for us. What the problem here really is that religion would love to invent amazing tools like death rays and atom bombs to smite the sinners. And they've been fantasizing about it for a few thousand years, writing these fancy stories in their Bible books. But religion doesn't work, and they can't do it. And look at us, science. Yeah, we'll build a death ray, but we can. We have power. Science works, religion doesn't. That's a reason to think that religion and science should be incompatible. Okay, as I said, we're getting down to the desperate ranks here. The other thing they do is this is where they're really desperate. They tell us other ideologies besides religion also make people do stupid things. It's not just religion's fault. There's a whole bunch of things. Look at communists. The communists got it wrong. Therefore, what? Now, this is not a defense of religion. This does not say religion has anything to do with science. It says that people sometimes make mistakes. And large numbers of people can make very large mistakes. Like Catholicism and Protestantism and Islam and, okay, sure, communism or capitalism. Yeah, we can screw them over in lots of different ways. But you know, this is really a zero-way argument. Because, have you ever heard of this fallacy? And no, if they rejected fallacies, they wouldn't be theists, or something like that. Okay, last one, and I'll be finished. This is the last desperate cry of the person Hitler, it's our fault. Blame us for that. Zombie Hitler comes rising up and marches across the stage to chew out the scientists and teach them the value of good Christian living, I guess. And it's always ironic because, as most of you I think know, Hitler's regime was Catholic. The German people were Catholic and Lutheran. The population of atheists in Germany at the time of the onset of World War II was roughly 1%. They were even worse than we are now in America. It was a religious country. A colleague of mine, Michael Lackey, has written this wonderful book called The Rise of Modernist God State. I highly recommend it, in which he goes through the literature of pre-war Germany and discovers that Nazi imagery was always tied up with religious imagery. You notice Nazi salute as they're marching by. Do you think that looks kind of like Darwin up there? No, the Nazi regime was a celebration of weird religion. I wouldn't say that they were exactly pure Catholic. They were this weird amalgamation of pagan beliefs and Catholic beliefs and Lutheran beliefs. They were pretty much agreed on the evilness of the Jews, like that guy down there. Obviously Jews, because all Jews look like that. But, you know, this again is not an argument for the compatibility of science and religion. It's an attempt to insult us very poorly, because this doesn't work. You know, I could just turn this around and say, oh, Nazis, oh, that's an argument against Catholicism. Okay, let me finish up here. Been going on too long. So basically, let me summarize. Science is godless. Yes, it is. Except by authority. I just said it. But if anyone wants to argue otherwise, try to come up with an argument other than those 12. Because those 12 are just crap arguments. They're really silly. I'm talking to the wrong crowd, aren't I? You guys are kind of more fancy. Okay, if you know anybody who's got a better argument, send them to talk to me. Thank you very much.
Meyer!